Good morning, all of you.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, you can see my slide.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and my voice is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So good morning, all of you. And so what we are going to do today is to talk about thing that we have been talking about yesterday. That is the deep neural network. And so in deep neural network, we started talking about the feed-forward in particular. So we talked about the optimization techniques and all. So today we are going to focus on feed-forward network. In particular, you're going to see the structure of the feed-forward neural network, and then the how you can train the deep neural networks. So the famous backpropagation algorithm and how it actually works. And if time permits, then I will get into some additional things like regularization and all, which are important to make things little better. Okay, so that's the plan for today. Okay, all right. Now, so let us start talking about the structure of the deep neural network. Okay, so when you talk about structure of the deep neural network, so what do we mean by that? Okay, so most of you have seen this little picture. So like there are neurons, nodes, and connections, and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so in any neural network, it will always the neural network always has a certain number of layers. Okay, and you can categorize these layers into 3 different categories. Okay, the input layer, the hidden layers, and the output layer. Okay, so every layer can be categorized in one of these 3 categories. So the input layer is where you basically take the data. Okay, so if you remember the example that I showed yesterday, the movie recommendation system. So there you take the actual data, for example, your friends recommendation, okay, friends rating and all, the input features that you take. Okay, and the output is something like the class levels. Okay, if you refer to that example, so output going to be something like yes or no. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. And the hidden layers are going to play all the tricks that you have seen, like how you can basically classify the data, the functional transformation, and all kinds of stuff. The hidden layers are going to play. Okay, so broadly, so the number of nodes, I would refer to these nodes or neurons. I will use interchangeably nodes and neurons. So the number of neurons or nodes in input layer is always equals to the dimension of the data. In other words, the number of features that you have in your data. Okay, if you have 3 features data, then the number of nodes in the input layer going to be 3. Okay, now this is the first component. The second is basically the output layer. There will be one output layer with a set of nodes. Okay, and the output is going to be either the class levels. If you think about the classification task, if you think about the regression task, for example, where your objective would be to predict some continuous value in the output node, then there is going to be only one node or one neuron. But for classification task, the number of neurons in the output layer, the number of nodes in the output layer equals to the number of class levels that you have. Okay. So, but in case of binary classification, we generally take only one node in the output layer, simply because if the value is close to 0, then one class, value is close to 1, this is another class. So it's like, because it plays complementary role, so one neuron will be sufficient. Okay, so but you can take 2 as well, no problem. Okay, so to sum up, the number of nodes in the output layer equals to the number of class levels in your training data. Okay, if it is a 10 class data, that you have to categorize every data point in one of the 10 classes, and there will be 10 neurons in the output layer. Okay, so these are pretty straightforward. Now, the most important part in deep neural network is coming up with this number of hidden layers and the number of neurons or the nodes in every hidden layer. Okay, and that is where the neural network is going to make all the differences. Okay, so general principle is that if you increase the number of layers and the number of nodes in every layer, the neural network is much more powerful. Its capacity is very high because it can model wide variety of data, okay, or decision boundary or something like nonlinear decision boundary or something like this, okay, which is true, but there are certainly some other issues involved, so which we will discuss later on when we will give you some practical guidelines for training deep neural networks. So you get to see when things can go wrong, how to fix the things, and so on and so forth. But for the time being, the general principle is that more hidden layers you take, more capacity you are going to increase for your neural network. Okay, so the hidden layers could be one or many. Okay, and so term deep network was introduced simply because the number of layers that you have in your number of hidden layers that you have in your deep neural network. Okay, so because your network is going to be deep, and that is what is called deep network or deep learning or whatever. Okay, now there is as such no hard and fast rule that how many layers you should take given a particular problem and data, how many layers you should take, how many hidden layers you should take in a deep neural network, or how many nodes or neurons you should take in the every hidden layer and things like that. There is no such very strong concrete guidelines. So when you design a network, all you have to see, you have to do trial and error and then figure it out which works best for you. Okay, so that is the first thing, and these things are called the architectural parameters. That means that the number of nodes in the input layer, number of nodes in the output layer, number of hidden layers, and number of nodes in every hidden layers and things like that. So this is going to define the architecture of your network. That is called architectural parameters. Okay. Do you have any question? If anybody has any question? All right. Okay. So now what are the other ingredients of a deep neural network? So what I will try to do, I will try to give you the kind of the things that you will need in order to build the deep neural network, and then I will talk about the most important things like how to train the deep neural network using backpropagation. Okay. So let's talk about the ingredients of a deep neural network. So what it is? So neural network is nothing but this kind of the graphical representation of a mathematical expression and nothing else. Okay, so you want to express a very complicated mathematical notation. So if you kind of write it down, that may not be very easily understandable to people. So this is another way of representing, but essentially what you are doing, essentially you are basically representing a mathematical equation using a graph kind of notation. That's what you do. Okay, and of course every model, like in any machine learning model, every model will have parameters, so it has parameters. Okay, so what are the different kinds of things that you have in the deep neural network? Okay, the first thing that is that the thing called the weight. You can see bunch of connections from one layer to another layer. Okay, so every connection will have weight. Okay, and so this weight I denoted by WLIJ, and this is the notation is important here because the notations will be used later on when we will do backpropagation and all. So WLIJ means that the connection weight of a node I, node number I in layer L, to the node number J in layer L plus 1. Okay, so it's connecting layer L to layer L plus 1 and connecting node number I from layer L to node number J in layer L plus 1. That's what it is doing. Okay, so therefore for every two consecutive layers, okay, this weight is essentially a matrix. Okay, This is a weight matrix. For example, from input layer to hidden layer 1, there is one weight matrix. From hidden layer 1 to hidden layer 2, there is another weight matrix. From hidden layer 2 to output layer, there is another weight matrix, and so on and so forth. Okay, so every layer these things. And you probably heard of another thing called tensor. Okay, in deep neural network. So tensor is nothing but a set of matrices. Okay, so that is why people like talking about the tensor processing and things like that, and which we will touch upon briefly later on. Okay, in this lecture. Okay, that's the first kind of weights or the parameters. The second kinds of parameters that you have is called bias. Okay, so every neuron, another non-input neuron, will have a bias. Okay, so this bias is denoted by BLI. That means the bias of ith neuron of lth layer. Okay, so this notation is going to be important. It has to be consistent with what we are trying to do here. So yeah, for your reference, I'm using this terminologies. Okay, and then the another thing is called the activation function. Okay, so there are many representation people actually talk about. So in this particular, in my case, I'm simply saying that the activation function is inside each non-input node. Okay, something like sigmoid function, and we are going to see some other activation function later on. Okay, so this activation function is essentially going to, achieve this non-linearity. Okay, something like that. You have seen that which side of this line it belongs, left and right, and things like this. Okay, so the activation function is essentially introducing non-linearity in your model. Okay, so therefore, so activation function, as there are certain number of activation functions you can choose from this, and each activation function has its own merits and demerits. But the most important thing in deep neural network is to get these values of these parameters, the weights and the biases, and they are model parameters which you will need to estimate from the training data. Okay, and that is where the back progression and these kinds of things will come into picture. Okay, all right. So now, what a non-input node of the network does? You have seen this input node, you have seen the output node, you have seen basically these hidden nodes and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so what a non-input node of the network does? Okay, so purpose of non-input node is to take input or information from the previous layer, okay, and you linearly combine them, okay, and then you simply pass it through our activation function. An activation function is going to determine the non-linearity, something like what we have seen in the last lecture. That was the right side of this curve, left side of this curve, and things like that. Okay. So if I have this little picture of the neural network, where I have this inputs like x1 and x2 is the input data, that means the actual feature values. Okay, W's are basically the weights, B is the biases, and the output is this, and F is the activation function that you choose. It could be either ReLU, it could be either the sigmoid function, and all kinds of stuff. Okay, anyway, so it is some function that you choose. So the input to a neuron in any non-input layer is going to be a linear combination of the data that you're receiving from the previous layer. So if you think about this expression and the neuron that I pointed out using this arrow, so the F is receiving input from x1 and x2, okay, and because x1 has weight W2, x2 also has weight W4, so that's basically I'm linearly combining them, and also the neuron has a bias B2. So it is basically that's the input to this neuron. And then I'm applying non-linearity, activation function telling which side of this line it belongs. So I then apply f of that, okay, and then you are going to get only one value. Okay. So in sum, every neuron in non-input layer is going to take one scalar value, which is a linear combination of the information from the previous layer, and going to produce another scalar value. Okay. The other purpose intuitively of the activation function is to tell that how good the signal that you received from the previous layer. So in general, these activation functions are increasing functions. Okay, if the signal strength is very good from the previous layer, okay, then this is going to say this is good. Okay, things like this. If it is bad, then this is going to say this is bad, close to 0 or even less than 0, something like that. It is going to say. Okay. So in a sense, it is actually telling the strength of the information that you are receiving from the previous layer. Okay. If you think about geometrically, then it is telling which side of the line it actually belongs. So the neuron in this case, which I pointed out using arrow, is nothing but a straight line. So the activation function f of that is going to tell whether it is on the particular point is on the left side or the right side of the thing that you have seen in the last lecture. Okay. So that is the kind of thing that we do, and basically you go on and on. So the computation is very same. If you increase more layers in the network, then you simply proceed in the similar way. Okay, input, output, and so on and so forth. Okay, all right. So next, so some examples of activation function. Okay, so the general principle of activation function is that it has to be continuous. Okay, or you can actually break that rule a little bit. So that is still is valid. Maybe finite number of discontinuity is still okay. But the desirable properties are that the functions have to be continuous, preferably differentiable, okay, and monotonically increasing. Okay, that's the thing. Because why monotonically increasing? Because the information that you're receiving from the previous layer, if that is high, then the activation function should also say that okay, this is good. If the information that you are receiving from the previous layer is bad or low, then your activation function should be able to tell that okay, this is bad, things like that. That's why it has to be increasing function. So sigmoid you have seen, okay, which I think was extremely popular, okay, for a few decades. So these people can use sigmoid, people can use leaky ReLU, okay, it's maximum of 0.1 into x comma x. Then people can use tan h, tan hyperbolic function. Then ReLU we can use rectified linear unit. Then max out, then ELU, and whatnot, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are some of the examples that I'm showing here. Now, generally now, at least for training deep neural network, people actually use ReLU, except in the final layer. Probably in final few layers, people use sigmoid function and so on, but in general, otherwise you use ReLU. Okay, simply because the derivative of the ReLU is like either 0 or 1. Okay, but the derivative of sigmoid is a small number. So if you train a deep neural network and if you take the chain rule of derivative, there will be too many multiplication of numbers less than 1. So this is going to create some trouble. We will discuss this issue later on. But just to give you the final remark is that the most popular function that people use today is called ReLU function, with the maximum of 0 and x. Okay, so and you can see the pictures here in this particular slide. Okay, all right. So yeah, so now the distinction between deep and shallow network. Okay, now I must tell you that deep network is not something is extremely new. I mean, this is actually a very old piece of thing. Okay, old piece of technology or old piece of like idea and so on and so forth. It has been there for last 50 years or so. There is nothing new in it. Okay, so typically, okay, that in a shallow network you can expect that only one kind of hidden layer. Okay, and so obviously you have one input layer, one output layer, only one hidden layer with bunch of neurons and all. Okay, now the contrary, in deep neural network the only difference is that you have multiple hidden layers. Okay, typically like sometimes you have 10, 15, 20, whatever. Okay, and there are certain reasons why people take deep neural network, which we'll discuss later on. Okay. So all right, so just a quick remark before I ask. So the remark questions that one of the reasons that deep neural network become very popular is that the training efficiency. Okay, so if you take only one hidden layer, then you have to take too many. So then computing these gradients, okay, ultimately you have to compute the gradients and all for training. So compute the gradient is generally time consuming, okay, because of the structure of this network. But when you take the deep neural network, you can take small number of neurons in every layer. You can take multiple layers in the network. So because of this nature of the structure of this network, you can actually reuse those values. Okay, so if you compute some value in the, for example, the rightmost layer, you can actually reuse those value in the next layer and so on and so forth. So reusability of these values makes it computationally much more efficient. Okay, that is one thing. The second thing is that people say that the combination of features, okay, it's a composite function, so combination of features also make things much more attractive. Okay, so yeah, when you see the vector propagation, you will get to know that why this is the case and so on. Okay, all right. Now I would like to ask you few quick questions, very simple questions, just to make sure that you are following the things. Okay. The question is, what are the number of features of the data that the deep network trying to model? If somebody can answer. Hello?
The number of features will be number of neurons in the input layer, right?
Yeah, right.
But future map will be number of neurons in hidden layers.
No, my question is, what is the number of features of the data that the neural network trying to model in this case?
Then it's a number of input layer, input neurons.
And what is the number of class levels in this particular neural network can model?
4, sir. Number of output neurons.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Now the next slightly complicated question is that how many parameters the shallow network, the network on the left side, has, the model parameters. You can do a little bit of computation and tell me that how many parameters the shallow network will have.
Uh, 6 into 9 into 4.
6 into 9 into 4.
Sir, 103, sir. 6 into 9 plus 9 plus
Yeah.
9 into 4 plus 4.
You have to tell me the final answer, but I want to know how you are computing. Like, you don't have to tell me that's all this additions and subtraction all. I mean, you just tell me
Okay,
how.
sir. Sir, then it will be number of trainable parameters. So the number of weights in the between input layer and the hidden layer plus biases, and the number of weights in between the hidden layer and output layer plus biases.
Yeah. So how many bias parameters will be there in this network?
Sir,
In this for the shallow one.
between input and hidden layer there will be 9 biases because we have
Right.
9 neurons in the hidden layer, and at the output layer we have 4 biases.
Okay. So total 13 biases, right?
Yes, sir.
And okay, all right. Okay. So, and for the deep neural network, the number of weight parameters.
It's the same approach. If you want number, then I'll calculate it, sir.
Yeah, similar approach that you can basically do. Yeah. So only thing is that the number of parameters will increase in this case. Okay. So yeah, that is correct. Okay. And the number of biases you can very easily compute it. Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. Do you have any other question? Anybody has any question up to this one?
Sir, so the number of parameters is the product of these three, right?
Not product. Not product. So okay. So let me just maybe I can give you some hint. Think about the deep neural network. Okay. So the number of weights connecting input layer and hidden layer one. How many number of weights you have? So in the input layer, how many neurons are there? 3, 6 to 8, right? There are 8
Yes, sir.
neurons in the input layer. And I believe there are 9 neurons in the hidden layer 1. So the number of weight parameters for layer 1 to 2, okay, that means connecting hidden layer, input layer and hidden layer 1 is 72, right? And the number of weights connecting 2 to 3 is 9 into 9, that is 81, right? Any objection from anybody? Do you have any objection, anybody?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Similar way, from 3 to 4, 3 to 4, okay, you have, sorry, from input layer to hidden layer 1, it is 72, 8 into 9. From hidden layer 1 to hidden layer 2, it is 9 into 9, 81. Then from hidden layer 2 to hidden layer 3, it is 81 because 9 into 9. Then from hidden layer 3 to input layer, output layer, you have 4 into 9, which is 36. Okay, so you simply add them up, and that is basically going to be the number of weight parameters in the network. Is it clear?
Yes,
You
sir.
just count the number of connections, okay, and that will give the number of weights. That's it, okay. And then biases you can simply compute. You just exclude only the input layer and simply bias for every neuron in your network. So you simply compute the number of total number of neurons in your network, except the neurons in the input layer, and you get the biases. Okay, so basically the weights plus biases is all the networks parameters that you have. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions?
Sir, is there particular approach, for choosing number of hidden layers and number of neurons at every layer for a particular model?
Unfortunately, no. Okay. Unfortunately, no. So you probably have seen some like blogs or articles here and there telling that, okay, you should take this, you should take that, but there is absolutely no convincing evidence or theory telling that you should take that. These are all trial and error and experimental. Okay. So I tell you the way to handle it. So one of the approaches that people actually do, that you first take a big network, okay, big enough. Okay, so it just simply take too many neurons in every hidden layer, too many layers and all, and simply train it and see whether your network is actually performing very well or not. You look at the loss values, you look at the accuracy and all, and see whether you are performing all in all very well. So if it is performing very well, okay, then what you can see that there might be because that the network is much more powerful or expressive than what you actually need. Okay, so in that case, network can actually remember all the data and all. So then basically you can clip little bit, okay, clip some maybe some layers, okay, and you can introduce some of the regularization technique which we will discuss, like you drop out few things and simply check, in order to compress the network, check whether your network is still performing well or not, or something like that. Okay, so the approach is basically you take a big one, see the performance. If it is good, then see whether a smaller network can perform the same thing, and so on and so forth. Okay. And the other approach is basically you start with a small one, you see whether network is performing very well on your data. If it does not, then the network is actually incapable of modeling your data. So you need to increase the bigger network. So you basically do this and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's all trial and error. Okay, any other question? Okay. All right. So, okay, fine. So now what we have to do is that training deep neural network. And before I start, I like to make one small remark is that now the availability of the libraries Okay, so be it PyTorch, Keras, TensorFlow, and all kinds of stuff. Okay. So hardly we have to do when you are actually building a network. Hardly you have to get into all the details. Okay, like this, how neural networks actually trained. Okay, that means the training. I'm talking about the training algorithm. Okay, how the things are actually found and so on and so forth. Okay. So, but I believe the important thing is that you need to know that how the neural networks are actually trained. That means if you think about this particular network, that it is not only about the architecture. Architecture is important thing, no doubt about it. Okay, that how many neurons you take and things and all kinds of stuff. But the most important thing is that how good the parameters of this network are. Okay, you have to find out the good values of these parameters, the weights and biases and all, because these are the model parameters which you need to find from the training data. Okay, and that is where the training actually is very, very important. And I mentioned that the only thing that you do in this case is basically chain rule of derivative, what you have learned in high school. Okay, so it's a sophisticated way of computing the derivative using chain rule, which is called back propagation algorithm, which you're going to see soon. But that's the basically approach that we do. So it's not a complicated algorithm, okay? It's a very simple one, but it helps you to understand, okay, how the networks are actually trained, and at least when you design a neural network, okay, you can design a neural network in many different ways. You can vary architecture in many different ways. But then if you know how this backpropagation is actually working, then you can actually pinpoint when something goes wrong, saying that, okay, maybe because of this particular structure, my derivatives computation is not good, or there are some issues with the derivative computation and things like that, and you can actually fix it. Okay. So this training deep neural network, the purpose of training deep neural network is that given a particular network, so you first fix your network, and then you have the training data, and then you have to adjust find out the model parameters in such a way that your network performs very well on the data that you have. Okay, that's the purpose. Okay, so we are going to start talking about training deep neural network, but the fundamental thing is that we basically use the gradient based things like this gradient descent approach. Okay, and in gradient descent approach you have to compute the gradients, and then basically you do all this stuff. Okay, now the algorithm which is known as back propagation algorithm is nothing but an efficient way of computing gradients. You are computing gradients because you have to apply gradient descent, but the back propagation gives you an efficient approach, because otherwise for a very big neural network, you won't be able to compute the things efficiently. It will take like years maybe. So back propagation is essentially an efficient approach of computing gradients. No magic in it, nothing special in it, just an efficient approach. Okay, all right. So let's before I get into this neural network business, okay, that neural networks and this and that and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so I would like to start off with back propagation on simple graph. So I told you already that what the neural network does. So it is nothing but it represents a complicated mathematical function. Okay, you have some input values, the feature values, and it produces the output. Okay, and it will have some parameters and which you have to basically find out. Okay, so it's nothing but a complicated mathematical function. Okay, so functional form we do not know, which we try to figure out using training parameters and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so the first remark that I would like to start off with is that any mathematical function can be represented as a graph. Graph as in computer science graph, not like bar chart and things like that. Okay? Just like there are nodes and connections and things like this. Okay, so any mathematical function can be represented as a graph. Now, if you can represent a thing's particular expression as a graph, then you can actually apply. We are going to see how you can apply the gradient computation over a graph. That's the thing. That's the fundamental thing. Once we know that, then you can actually start to apply the whole things in neural network. Okay. So let's say I'm just starting up with a very simple example. Okay, so I have a 3 variable function f of x, y, z, and my functional form is x plus y into z. Okay, now if I represent this particular expression in a graph, this is one of the expression that I am going to get. Okay. So we have x, y is the input, and then basically there is x plus y is another basically node which is performing this operation that is going to produce some value called q, for instance, and then it is going into another node called star where z is coming in. You are actually combining this q and z, and you are finally producing f. Okay, so that's what you are doing here. So this is just a representation of this particular expression. Now we are going to see how we can actually compute derivative over this graph. Once we know that, we understand the basic things, then you can straight away apply the whole thing in different network and so on and so forth. This is nothing but a graph, computation of a graph, neural network. Okay. So let me just illustrate this one. I will come out of my slide show and then I will write it down. So okay. So I hope my slide still visible to you. Okay. Let me know if you have any problem. Can somebody please confirm that you can see my slide?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, all right. Okay. So okay, now we're going to see how we can actually do back propagation. It's nothing but computing gradients over a simple graph, and then you can extend the whole thing for other stuff and so on and so forth. Okay. So let's say that we have to compute this whole thing. Say x is equals to -2, then y is equals to 5, and then z equals to -4. Okay, that's basically the values on which I am going to compute the derivative, and that's basically I am going to do this over this graph. Okay. Now, for sure, because you have this expression and all, okay. So for sure, now if I simply put it the numbers here, so x, y I know, so therefore q is going to be 3 here, okay, and f is going to be -12 here. Okay, that's a simple, like if you simply do this is called the forward pass. So for example, when you are doing in the neural network, if you have the values known, then you simply input the values and then you're going to produce some value in the output. It's called the forward pass. So if I do something like this, then I'm going to get like this. Okay, all right. Now if I simplify the whole thing, then so my q in this case is equals to x plus y, because this particular node, okay, my q is x plus y. So that means like the simple derivative thing that if you do, if I do the partial derivative, then del q, then del x is equals to 1, okay, and then del q del y also equals to 1. Very simple like derivative that you can think about it. So what my objective, of course my final objective would be what? My final objective would be of course to compute the partial derivatives of, for example, this del f del x, del f del y, and del f del z. That's what I really want to do. Okay, and because I need to do all possible partial derivative comparison when I'll be doing back propagation and all. Okay, all right. Now, yeah, now let's see, go to the next step and then see what we can do. Okay. So I just copy this particular slide. Okay. Now, so now my F, what would be my F in this case? My F in this case is nothing but is this Q into Z. Okay. So if I compute this del F del Q, I'm going to get Z, plain straightforward computation, and del F del Z is going to be Q. Okay, just a simple comparison that I'm going to perform over here. Okay, all right. Now, how basically I can propagate my values? Okay, in the backward direction. So, if I want to compute del F del Z, okay, in this particular graph, let me just copy the whole thing. Okay. Now, if I compute, I just erase this off. Okay. Now, so del F del Z. Okay. Here, what you can see here, okay, is basically that is where I am going to compute the del F del Z. So direct connection from Z to the star. Okay. So I am basically can apply straightaway rule and then compute it. So what would be the value of del F del Z? So del F del Z will be 3 in this case. Okay. 10 state computation. All right. Now what would be del F del Q? So del F del Q. Okay, that means here. Okay. So del F del Q in this case again it will be very straightforward. It will be 4. Sorry, it will be minus 4 actually, not 4. It will be minus 4. Okay. All right. So these are basically very straightforward things. Now, then if we go one step backward, for example, okay, in the other direction, okay, what happens then? So here, what happens now is this. Now I am interested to compute del F del Y. Okay. Now how I can compute the del F del Y? I'm just erasing this off so that I can write it down here. So now I want to compute del F del Y. Okay. So del F del Y. That means here. Okay. So now remember that if I follow the computation graph, so I have to basically come all the way from this step, okay, up to this step. So from here to here, and from then here to here. If I simply follow the computation graph, and that is where the chain rule is coming to picture. Okay. So what it is then? So del F del Y, okay, it depends on what? First of all, this F depends on Q, Q depends on Y. So what I can write it down in this way, that F depends on Q, that means del F del Q, into Q depends on Y, that means del Q del Y. Okay, you simply follow this particular graph, the structure, the path you will follow. Okay, right from the end position to the position that you are interested in. So follow the path and simply take the chain rule very, very. Okay. So if you do that, then of course you can compute the derivative, and I believe this is equals to, if you do that, then I believe this is -4 or something. Yeah, I believe this is -4. Okay. Now similarly, if you compute del f del x, okay, I just copy the whole thing again and show you. Now I am interested to compute del f del x. Okay. Okay. Now I need to compute del f del x. So again, you simply follow the path. Okay. What's the what path you have to follow? Again, from here. So basically, this one depends on q, and then this q depends on x. Okay. So again, very similar expression. What I can write it down. So this is del f. The f depends on q. This is del q into q depends on x. So this is del q del x. Okay. And so if you compute, then I believe this is also going to be -4, I guess. There might be a little, the computation here, you can check it, but I believe this is -4. Okay. So that is basically how we can actually apply the derivative over partial derivative, actually, because you are dealing with multivariate function, partial derivative over a graphical structure. Okay. So I hope this gives you a little idea of how you can actually do things, and this is called back propagation. You are actually moving in backward direction, starting from the end. Okay, final output to backward direction. You simply follow. Once you have the graph ready, okay, then you can simply follow in the backward direction, and you simply follow the chain. Which one is dependent on which, and simply do the chain rule. Apply the chain rule, and then get the values. Okay. Now in neural network, so neural network is nothing but a graphical representation. Okay, graphical representation of the information flow. Exactly, you are representing a mathematical expression simply using graphical notation. Okay, something like this, what you have seen here. Okay, and as a result, we can apply the same understanding, same thing on the neural network when we are trying to compute the gradients, because the gradient is the most valuable thing that you make use of in order to train the network. Okay, so yeah. Do you have any question up to this one? If anybody has any question.
Sir?
Yes, please.
By the gradient, do you mean the derivative, sir?
Yes, I mean the derivative, partial derivative in particular.
Yes, sir.
So because,
Sir,
yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, here the optimizer step will make use of these gradients to update the parameters, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, sir.
So in this case, there is no, as if my optimization function is f. Okay, so I'm trying to optimize that. So I'm just trying to show you how things work on the graph. But when I will in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about the things on. I'm going to apply the whole thing on the actual network, and you're going to see how you can define the error function and then how you can basically back propagate. Okay. Any other question? Okay. So one final remark is that. So when you are dealing with modern deep nets, for example, I'm not sure whether you have heard of this network called GPT-3 or things like that. It's a very big language processing network based on transformer network, invented or designed by OpenAI. So it has 100 or approximately 170 billion parameters. Okay, 170 billion parameters. So modern deep nets are extremely large in terms of the number of parameters it has. Okay, and therefore so there are some differences with the terminology that different people use. Okay, so when I'm dealing with, for example, the single variable, I can call it derivative. When I'm dealing with multiple variable, I'm calling it partial derivative, and so on and so forth. And so gradient can mean, it depends on the individual, can mean, for example, individual quantity, something like del f del x. Or sometimes when people are dealing with large networks or multivariate functions, the gradient may mean the entire vector, for example, the vector of all the partial derivatives. So this is just the terminology, nothing else. Okay. So for example, if you think about this particular network, you will have three parameters or three variables, in this case x, y, z. So when I talk about the gradient, okay, of this particular network as a whole, then I would probably say all three together: del f del x, del f del y, and del f del z. Okay, so just a terminological like convenience that people actually use. So don't confuse these two things. Okay. Do you have any other question? So before I get into the back propagation on neural network, the actual neural network, so I would like to take a short break. But before that, I would like to take a couple of questions if you have any. Any other question? So by the way, this is one kind of network we are talking about today. This is a feed-forward network. Okay, and in next few lectures, you are also going to see the CNN, then you are going to see the RNN, then you are going to see attention networks and transformers and things like that. So I'll try to give you all the most important network structures later on in this particular course. So this is the most fundamental thing that you can think about, the feed-forward neural network.
Sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, in this gradient calculation, we use the expressions of the f and q, right? Sir, f equal to x plus y into z.
Right.
So, in actual libraries, they use this way, or they use, for, let's suppose, del f by del q, will they use change in f by change in q as a derivative?
I'm not sure whether I understood your question. Your question is in actual library, how they compute it?
Yes, sir. Do they compute using the expressions, I mean, by actual partial derivatives, or do they compute using numerical techniques like del f equal to, change in f with respect to the past step, and del q will be change in q with respect to the past step? It's like
Okay.
f2 minus f1 by q2 minus q1 type.
Yeah, so you are right. So in actual, for example, when you will be dealing with neural networks, so all you have the numerical values. Okay. So for example, the feature values in numerics, and then these parameters. Okay, all in like you are starting from some position. So you basically do the numerical computation. Yeah, because you do not know the expression, right?
Okay, sir.
Okay, so we will take a short break and then we will come back and then see how things can be done on actual network. Okay, from simpler to complicated network.